Chapter 1. The hit that took out Soweto cash heist and truck hijacking kingpin. A well-coordinated and meticulously planned police operation in Soweto would signal the downfall of one of the most notorious criminal gangs in the region. This gang, led by Tsietsi Bova Mofokeng and Tsepo from Zola, had been wreaking havoc in the area, specializing in violent cash-in-transit, robberies and high-profile truck hijackings. The two men had built a formidable reputation as ruthless criminals who operated with precision and fear. Mofokeng, known for his strategic mind, and Tsepo, the muscle, had masterminded dozens of heists over the years, amassing a fortune through illegal means. The police, however, had long been on their trail, trying to connect the dots between their various operations. Despite numerous attempts, the law had failed to apprehend the gang leaders, and the public had grown more and more fearful with each robbery. But everything changed when an unexpected tip-off gave the authorities the information they needed to strike. The gang was reportedly planning their biggest heist yet, targeting a heavily guarded cash van in the heart of Soweto. What they didn't know was that law enforcement, along with private security companies, had been preparing for this moment for weeks, ready to intercept their plans before the criminals could carry out their attack. Chapter 2. CIT heist and truck hijacking suspects shot and killed. In the early hours of the morning, as the criminals made their way to execute their latest heist, law enforcement had already positioned themselves in strategic locations to corner the suspects. The police had successfully tracked the gang's every movement, thanks to detailed intelligence gathered over time. A calmness and precision had marked the operation, which was based on months of careful planning. As the gang drove into Dobsonville, unaware that the authorities were waiting for them, they were suddenly surrounded by law enforcement from all sides. With nowhere to escape, the gang made a desperate attempt to flee, but it was too late. The officers opened fire in a swift and calculated response, neutralizing the suspects before they could carry out their plans. Tsietsi Bova Mofokeng and Tsepo, along with two other gang members, were shot and killed in the shootout. The violence erupted quickly, and within minutes, the operation was over. Police seized several firearms from the gang, including handguns and an unlicensed rifle, highlighting the violent nature of the group's criminal activities. The gang had been ruthless, but in the end, they were no match for the well-prepared forces of law enforcement. The deaths of Mofokeng and Tsepo sent shockwaves through Soweto, ending the reign of terror they had created over the years. Chapter 3. Tsietsi Bova Mofokeng and Tsepo from Zola. Tsietsi Bova Mofokeng and Tsepo were far from ordinary criminals. Mofokeng, known for his cold and calculating nature, had built his reputation on his ability to stay one step ahead of the law. He was a master of strategy, often planning every detail of a heist with surgical precision. Tsepo, on the other hand, was the enforcer, violent, ruthless, and willing to do whatever it took to ensure the success of their crimes. The duo had been involved in a string of highly sophisticated robberies across Soweto, targeting armored vehicles and hijacking trucks carrying valuable cargo. Their operations were well coordinated, often involving multiple vehicles and multiple gang members. The two men had earned a fearsome reputation, and their criminal activities had made them nearly untouchable for a long time. But despite their careful planning, their success came at a steep cost. The violence and fear they inflicted on their community were unrelenting, leaving behind a trail of victims and shattered lives. Over time, law enforcement had zeroed in on their operations, but the gang's ability to evade capture had frustrated investigators. Still, as the gang grew bolder, it was only a matter of time before someone within their circle would tip off the authorities about their next move, something that would ultimately lead to their downfall. Chapter 4. Soweto were shot and killed by police in a recent operation in Soweto, Dobsonville. The police operation that resulted in the deaths of Mofokeng and Tsepo was a direct response to intelligence gathered over several weeks. Law enforcement, in cooperation with private security, had been tracking the gang's movements, using a mix of surveillance, informants, and intercepted communications to build a case against them. Dobsonville, a quiet part of Soweto, was chosen as the site of the final takedown. The operation was set in motion when the authorities learned that Mofokeng and Tsepo were planning yet another cash van robbery. Armed with this knowledge, the police moved swiftly to surround the gang's route. Officers positioned themselves at key intersections and along known escape routes, ensuring that the suspects would have no way of escaping once they made their move. As the gang approached the target area, they were caught completely off guard. With nowhere to run, they were forced into a deadly confrontation with the police. The gang's attempt to fight back was futile, and the gunfight that followed was brief but intense. By the time the dust settled, Mofokeng, Tsepo, and two other gang members were dead, and their criminal empire had come to an abrupt end. The law enforcement teams involved in the operation were praised for their professionalism and precision, and the public breathed a sigh of relief knowing that these dangerous criminals were no longer a threat to their community. Chapter 5. The two suspects are linked to cash-in-transit, CIT robberies, and other serious crimes. Mofokeng and Tsepo were not only notorious for their CIT robberies, but they were also linked to a wide range of violent crimes. Over the years, the duo had masterminded several high-profile heists, each one more audacious than the last. Their targets were always well-planned and carefully chosen, and they had a reputation for being able to strike without leaving a trace. In addition to the CIT robberies, they were also linked to multiple truck hijackings. These hijackings were particularly brutal, with the gang often resorting to extreme violence against drivers and bystanders. They had even been connected to assaults, armed robberies, and a series of shootings. The sheer scale and scope of their criminal activities had made them public enemies, but they had been difficult to track down due to their ability to operate in secrecy. Law enforcement had long suspected their involvement in these crimes, but without concrete evidence, they had struggled to make an arrest. The final operation that led to their deaths was a culmination of months of hard work and dedication by police forces, who had pieced together the puzzle of the gang's criminal empire. With their deaths, law enforcement had successfully dismantled one of the most dangerous criminal syndicates in Soweto. Chapter 6. This decisive action followed intelligence received by law enforcement and private security. The success of the operation was the result of an effective collaboration between law enforcement and private security companies. For months, the authorities had been receiving crucial intelligence from various sources. Informants had provided valuable details about the gang's operations, including the locations of their planned heists, the identities of their members, and even their weapons caches. Private security firms had played a critical role in gathering this intelligence, conducting surveillance, and monitoring the activities of known associates of the gang. This intelligence was crucial in formulating a plan to stop the gang before they could carry out their next heist. The law enforcement agencies worked closely with private security to ensure that the operation was carried out flawlessly. Coordinating across multiple departments and agencies, they were able to pinpoint the exact location and time of the gang's movements. With all the information in hand, the police were able to carry out a surprise operation that left the suspects with no chance to flee or resist. The speed and precision of the takedown were made possible by the seamless exchange of information between the various agencies. It served as a testament to the effectiveness of teamwork in tackling organized crime. Chapter 7. As the gang was reportedly en route to rob a cash van. The gang's last heist was already in motion when law enforcement first caught wind of their plan. Intelligence suggested that Mofokeng and Tsepo had already made the necessary preparations for the robbery, and all that remained was for them to reach the cash van. Police had been monitoring the gang's movements closely and knew that the heist was imminent. The authorities quickly mobilized their resources, positioning officers at key points along the route the gang was expected to take. They had already identified the time and place of the robbery and were ready to strike before the criminals could carry out their plans. The suspects, confident that they were going to pull off another successful heist, were completely unaware of the police presence. As they made their way toward the target, the tension mounted. It was only a matter of time before they encountered law enforcement, and when they did, it would be a confrontation they couldn't win. The authorities had the advantage, and as the suspects approached, the trap was sprung. Chapter 8. A coordinated effort by the authorities helped intercept their plans in the Dobsonville area. The operation in Dobsonville unfolded with clinical precision. As the suspects neared the target area, they were met by a well-coordinated response from law enforcement. Police vehicles and officers were strategically placed at intersections, blocking all possible escape routes. The criminals, caught completely off guard, found themselves surrounded. As they tried to flee, they were quickly confronted by officers who had been waiting for this exact moment. The police took swift action, and within minutes, the shootout had ended. In the aftermath of the operation, the authorities seized several weapons, including an unlicensed rifle and multiple handguns, showing just how dangerous the gang had been. The officers involved were praised for their professionalism and quick thinking, while the community of Soweto could finally breathe easy, knowing that the criminals who had terrorized them for so long were no longer a threat. This operation was a stark reminder of the constant battle between law enforcement and organized crime, but in this case, it was a victory for justice.